go ahead and get those levels going, and then we can get
Levels,
started.
levels. Levels. Getting them levels. It's looking good.
I know, radio host. Get your radio host voice on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. Yeah, that way I put it at a pretty decent level so that you can, if you want to mess around with it, you can.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, welcome everyone back to the EmpowerUp podcast. I believe this is episode 9. And we have a special guest here, Carlo. How do you pronounce your last name? It's in
No guess.
Noguez.
Yeah, I
Carlos
don't guess I
Noguez.
know.
Yes. Um, so yeah, this is a guest that Steve and I both know from IGDA San Diego. He's always been incredibly active in the community, and I'm not sure if you still are, but you used to be on the board for IGDA. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that was at the beginning of last year. However, it got a little bit too chaotic, as we know from just world events. That I definitely stepped down from that. I had been waiting so long to get in there, and then I had to step down, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so he's pretty active. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit about your background, what you're doing now, and then we can kind of go from there.
Well, I'm just gonna read my Twitter. I mean, my Twitter bio says most of it. So I'm a game designer, VR enthusiast, 3D printing technician, and I also co-host in a show called Dirty Robots. And now I'm a kind of, I would say, like a pretty decent streamer. I'm affiliate, so it's
Mm,
been quite good. Um, and I also work alongside a charity called Build a Miracle. So we help build houses for people in Mexico, which is kind of what I've been trying to tie all my stuff back into.
cool, cool. Um,
So what I got a question for you.
Mm.
And one of the things I love is Build a Miracle because that's one of the organizations that I've been able to volunteer with. What's the whole? What is Build a Miracle for anybody that's listening and doesn't know, doesn't recognize it?
Okay, so basically, in 1999, this charity got started, and the idea was to build one house a year. However, that snowballed into we're currently building 50 houses a year, except for not counting last year, just because of again world events. Um, but when that charity moved on from that house building onto education, that was kind of like a major pivot that the organization had. So we work with very poor communities in Tijuana, Mexico, in a community called El Florido. We've been with that particular community for 10 years or so. And that has really been like the place where we've been able to build community alongside of the families that we help. So it's really a self-feeding sort of ecosystem there, where the families are not only receiving their houses, but now they're also receiving education. So that's really like a wonderful program that helps about so we've built 450 homes. So and then we've also helped with a bunch of other community projects. So we've built everything from schools to what's called hospitals to like sports courts to parks. So it really it encompasses, I would say, around 600 families or so get benefited by this program.
Dude, that is freaking awesome. And one of the things that I love is the focus on not just helping build homes, but also, like you mentioned, the education aspect of it, because that's one of those things where it's uh, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's something that it seems like this organization is absolutely taking to heart. And it's not just the like the parents, but it's also the kids that you're helping with projects as well. Can you talk about some of the programs that you have regarding education specifically?
Yeah, so that's the program I'm gonna be heavily involved in, which is just the education programs from the community center. We have this beautiful building that we were granted through very small donations, basically, that made us have this 3-story tall with like 6 different rooms, and that's where all of our education comes out of. And it's everything from what's called a full beautician school to mathematics, English, because in Mexico, if you know computer literacy, that already puts you a leg up from people, from most of the common workers. And then if you know English, that's a different, even higher step up. Because a lot of companies are asking, especially in their local area, hey, can you speak English? Hey, can you work Excel? Here they tell you, hey, don't put Excel on your resume. In Mexico, they're like, you need to put Excel on your resume, and if you don't know it, you better know it. So that the different sets of education are basically towards that goal for people to be able to say, hey, like the education that I got at the community center is very directed towards self-improvement. So we are a fully fledged a government certified elementary school, middle school, and high school. Um, so we can give those degrees out to people. They go out and they take the state test, but they also have the ability to find a sponsor to get them through college as well.
That's awesome.
Dude,
Yeah.
I love that. And one of the things, my favorite like stories that you told me was about the robotics team and their successes. Can you let the fans or let the listeners know what that was exactly?
So this tiny team from our community center, basically, it was started by Ismael. Ismael is a self-taught electrician. The guy was um, going outside and basically teaching kids about robotics with a tarp and like out in the middle of nowhere, basically would just go and teach these kids. That was before we had the community center. And so he would teach them with Lego robotics, which was a very cool way to get them started. Well, maybe around 4 years after he started that Lego robotics, we had enough kids in high school that were interested in robotics to start a team. So that was 2019. So the 2019 team entered first robotics competition, which is an internationally known competition. And we got to participate in as team 7752. So that was our team call. And we got to participate in the nationals, and they won second place in the novice division in that first year that they participated. And now, just to give you a profile of the other teams that were participating, they had a team from Holland, they had a team from England, they had 2 teams from Mexico City from Ibero, which is it's a private school where the most rich kids go to get an education. And they won first prize. So in fact, one of the kids had never even flown on a plane. We had to fly them to Mexico City, and they had never been on a plane. They had never been to any sort of competition, and despite all that, they showed us that it was possible.
That's
That is freaking
awesome.
awesome. One of the other things that I remember you had mentioned was the differences in resources that your team had compared to all of the other teams had having. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, just as a quick, so most teams will. So the cap to spend on your robot, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I think it's either 7K or like 5K. The robotics competition will give you a $1,000 kit to start your robot. That's what every single team gets. Our team had to, because we just didn't have the resources. So the kids had even come up with a way to make the motors pull double duty. So it was a much more leaner robot because they had to be, because they just didn't have the resources. Also, like, one of the other amazing feats of engineering that they were able to do, they would go out to the junkyard and they took parts from a washing machine, and they took those motors, and those were the motors that they ended up doing to make the robot even do a third action. So most robots they make one motor makes one action, and the reason for it is if it fails, you know what to fix. But if your motor's pulling multiple actions, and if it fails, then you have a major problem. And in fact, one of the things that they had to do in competition, so each team, when they go in, and just shows the resourcefulness and just the less amount of resources that they can deal with. Each team, when they saw, there's this thing called the pit, which is where you fix your robot, you get there before the competition. Our kids had 2 toolboxes. Every single other team, they were showing me pictures. It's like they had a whole machine shop. It's like, they had a laser cutter, a 3D printer, just in case anything were to fail, they have all the resources there at their disposal. When the robot got to the competition, they found out they were 3 inches too big, too tall. So any other team, I think, would have said, hey, like, we messed up, like, that's it, like, no problem. The team from Holland said, hey, come use our shop. You guys deserve to, like, play in this in the games. So, bring in your robot, and you guys can use all of our pieces. Within an hour, they fixed up the robot. They cut it. They basically, and since their robot is also so lean, they had such an understanding of the robot and what the robot was able to do, that they were able to cut it just in time and just to the right specifications, so that they could participate into that thing and into the competition. So yeah, it with the least amount of resources, I think our robot was like an extra $600. I know teams that hit the limit, and they even come up with crazy ways of figuring out just to cut cost. In other words, they'll use different types of motors, and they'll get them super on the cheap just so that they can add more things. Our team works differently. They cut stuff because they just can't afford to get those.
Dude, that is freaking cool. And like, one of the lessons that I absolutely love about that is actually something that I found that you do kind of naturally, Carlos, and that it's understanding that it's not necessarily about the resources, but it's more about the resourcefulness and being able to problem solve and just use what you've got. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons, is that, like, so many people are focused on, oh, I need more money or I need more resources in order to be able to accomplish their goals. But one of the reasons why I love the group of people that we have on here is that when you have a higher purpose, you just figure out ways. You have to come up with stuff, right? And I know even Byron has had to, like, in order to reach certain goals, you just have to, like, well, I got to figure something out. I know what I want, but I don't know how to get there. So asking people, finding other, finding wise words, people to help. It's just a matter of problem solving. And instead of saying, I can't, it's asking, how can I? And then when you do something like that, you're able to get better answers. So thank you so much for sharing that example, Carlos. I know another project that you're very involved with in Mexico is a video game development community there. Can you go a little bit into, like, what's your role and how are you participating that way?
Yeah, so I've been a big proponent of having the video game industry be in Latin America. I think we have games like Chris Tales. There was another one by a Brazilian developer with the Rock Sisyphus Rock. That was also a Brazilian game developer. So I've been really trying to find out ways to get the San Diego community to interact with the Tijuana game developers community. I mean, it's been very difficult because I think the major barrier sometimes is the border, and currently, I think the border is a major barrier because there's people that currently cannot cross over. So that has really put a damper on that sort of like exchange. However, I think we need to come up with ways to facilitate that exchange between, especially because there's a lot of San Diego game developers and the Tijuana game developers, including some of them. We have Indie Games Mexico, we have Matrix Core, we have Keeper Team, we have there's a couple of teams in Ensenada, and then there's also an organization called they do GammaCon, which they do an event every year where they just promote basically geek culture, but they mostly focus on games, which is great. It's really awesome that we're kind of having more events that way. Also, there's this organization called Tijuana Innovadora, which is trying to it's innovative Tijuana. So it's basically an organization that tries to help Tijuana through innovation, whether that be businesses or like they have a fashion thing, and they're about to start their video game division, which I've been just talking back and forth with them of like what are some of the events that they can do and what they can like try to provide. Also, I was a big proponent for the universities. UABC is currently going to do an animation program, which is the University of Baja California Norte, which is like basically the state school for Tijuana, and that is the route that we need to go if Tijuana and Mexico is going to become a hub for game development, which would be we need to tackle the education issue, which we're currently just not providing enough, animation careers, creative writing. I mean, in Mexico, no, it's like that's you become an accountant or a doctor or something else, or an engineer, but any sort of the arts is very neglected.
Yeah, I love
Gotcha.
that. I love that, man. I remember while I was down in San Diego going to school, they a couple schools closed down. There was the Art Institute, and there was one other school that taught game development. And I felt that ever since then, there's been a really huge void in that whole space in that region. And from the sound, from the looks of it, it seems like you're really trying to help fill that void. And I love that you're kind of getting Mexico involved as well, because it's really just divided by the border. It's still so close to San Diego, and I just think that's this is awesome. I love the fact that you're really giving back and trying to get the community together.
So what are some things that your organization is currently looking for at the moment? I know like there's so many challenges, especially with the events that the world is going through right now. But what is something that your organization is looking to, like short-term goals, and how can listeners out there just be able to participate and help with what you're looking to do?
Well, well then. I was like, are we closing? Is the podcast over? Oh snap. No, yeah, so I'm currently taking on a very particular task, which is I'm trying to show Build a Miracle that they can promote themselves in different avenues. They've kind of been kind of hitting up the same sponsors for a long time, and that has been something that really I think it stifles them not only from getting other sponsors but also the places they can go. because it's really easy to sell a house like, hey, we're going to give this house to this family in Mexico, but it's really hard to sell education. So what I've decided to do is that I'm going to be doing streaming, and my goal is going to be $50,000 for our organization's multimedia program. There's already a lot of kids that do that. I made a very small multimedia room. It's very similar to the setup that I have here at my home. But that multimedia room is going to help other kids, to become TikTokers, to become YouTubers, to become Twitch streamers, because that's what the kids want to do, and that's also, I think, one of the things that as a young man, I was definitely told, hey, you need to do this because of this. But I remember as I got older, a lot of people told me, oh, yeah, like you're interested in that, go do that. So, in fact, that's how I got into 3D printing. So, I want to take a very similar approach with this multimedia program and tell the kids, hey, look, here's all the equipment. I know this is what you want to do because I've seen your videos, I've seen their TikToks, I've seen their little YouTube channels. There's this girl that teaches sign language, a Mexican sign language on YouTube. But what she does is she does the full getup. So she did a couple songs from Coco. So she will be translating the songs as she's dancing along and just showing kids with subtitles at the bottom, and it's very, very well done. And we also have another kid that he's 12 years old, uh, Israel, and he's a powerhouse. This kid films his videos, edits his videos, posts them, like comes up with the ideas. And what he's been doing a lot lately, he's really been getting into model kits. So he will show you how to make model kits. And it's just like, it's so amazing because he has like even like different angles, like face, like when he's talking to you about, I'm going to explain to you this model kit. And then it's his hands on a different angle. And he understands audio, he understands video editing. So it's pretty incredible. That's why I'm really passionate about really getting this off the ground, and I want to continue to have this conversation. So I thought to myself, what's the best way to continue this conversation? Well, I'm just going to be streaming all the time. I'm just going to be streaming 2 to 3 times a day, 2 to 3 times a week. And I will be doing a lot of talking streams about, hey, let's talk about charities. Hey, let's talk about game development. So all of my passions into different talking times, and also playing video games, which is what I love doing.
That's awesome. And
So,
so it sounds like you're still kind of getting it started.
mm,
Is there any official way to donate if we were interested? I'm sure that you guys would appreciate that, right? So get better
yeah.
equipment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Buildamiracle.net definitely has a donation button built in right on it. I'm going to be putting that on all my social medias. So anything that's Can Workshop, like I will have easy ways for people to like kind of not only see where their donations are going, but see where they can donate. So if you feel more comfortable with even just doing, hey, I shop on Amazon, we will have the affiliate link. So that's already kind of set up through Build a Miracle. Right now, if you go on Amazon and you pick a charity, we're on their list of charities. And if you're local San Diego, we do take donations of things like, everyone has an extra laptop lying around somewhere. We always take those as well. But as far and that's also one of the things the charity has really focused on local. I'm going to try to focus on a wider audience that's like an international audience,
Mhm.
and letting them know, hey, you don't have to come down to Tijuana to find out where your money's going. You're going to be able to see where your donations are going through my eyes and through my me being involved with the charity, because they've definitely let me just whatever I want to show and however I want to show it, I will have that ability. I also have the video editor that does our charity videos that will be helping me along with that.
Okay, cool. And
Yeah.
follow-up question. I recently finished working with an organization that was pretty similar, that they were based out of Massachusetts. So, do you guys just do your in-person classes, or is there room to do like a Zoom class, right? So we talked earlier. I'm not really doing audio at a professional capacity, but maybe as like a guest speaker coming on, helping teach what I know. Is that a possibility as well?
Yeah, and this is also something that I mean, piggybacking off of that, and I think this is something really beautiful that the charity has taught me, which is it doesn't matter how you help as long as you help somebody. And we do take online speakers. The only problem is they have to be in Spanish.
Mm,
We do have translators. Like I'm one of the translators that does that for people. But even me hearing that you're already working with another charity, that is, to me, that's like a wonderful thing to like always think about, which is like any single person that's working with a charity. Hey, I couldn't participate in that particular charity. As long as you're participating with a charity,
mm,
that's like a wonderful thing to do.
mm-hmm.
Or even yourself, like you can just be helping out somebody and just having a chat, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you touched on was receiving donations of physical items, and I know I've helped corral monitors, PCs, tablets. What are the types of things that you're looking for, just in case anybody has extra equipment lying around?
So for my particular part of the charity, which is going to be the multimedia program, we just really need electronic equipment that works. That is one of the things that's like really difficult for us to kind of like acquire, especially because I understand that sometimes through like shipping costs, like it could be more expensive than just giving it to your local Goodwill. So I would highly recommend that if that is one of the routes that you want to do, I do have a contact page directly on all my social media. I will talk about more about it for sure in some future capacities, but tablets, as long as they're not broken, because we also, it's funny because we got like 16 or 17 iPads. And then so I went and I picked up the package from UPS. They were all cracked. Every single one of them was cracked. And I
Mm,
was just like, like I'm not your e-waste disposal unit, so as long as the equipment works and it's not like damaged to a point where it can be hazardous basically to a child, then that's perfectly okay. Because like for instance, our boards that we use, sometimes it's nice to give just the kids some stuff to play with. Like we have 6 snowball microphones,
mm,
which are the USB regular microphones. And we tell them, it's like, hey, there you go, have at it, and then the XLRs, yes, this is an
yeah.
XLR,
Yeah.
the nicer ones, we keep for when they need to do a bigger production. So all of the equipment that's the most reliable equipment that we have at the time is basically top tier. So that top tier stays there till there's another equipment that replaces it. And we've really come up with a way, and this is, I think every single organization that works in a nonprofit, this is something that usually they don't think about, because I know Build a Miracle sure didn't, which was coming up with a cycle for all of your technical equipment is very good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by this is, what I told them is, your computers, no matter how expensive you bought those computers for, after 8 years of wear and tear at a charity, they're going to be broken down, and a lot of them are just not going to work. So what we do is that as soon as they almost become obsolete, almost, and by I mean you'll get 1 or 2 more years of use out of the equipment, we donate it to kids to have in their home. Which is like, yeah, you have a really bad computer, but it's at least in your house. So that is one of the things that I definitely encourage people to have, which is a cycle where all of your equipment goes.
Mm,
And touching on that a little bit, For the people that don't understand what is the environment of these families that you're helping, can you give like a comparison of what their living situations are like before they actually get a house?
Yeah, so living so first of all, they live in a place where it's really far away from the center of town. So Tijuana is actually about the size of San Diego County. So San Diego County, pretty big county. However, we have Tijuana basically has 2.8 million, which is almost the same population as the 3 million of San Diego County, but in about a quarter of the space. So it really causes this issue not only with population density, but most of our families didn't make it through elementary school, live in these densely populated areas that their only method of work is most likely a factory or local jobs that are like warehouse worker or like transportation. A lot of our families work in transportation, and they're basically earning about just by for comparison's sake about $6 an hour. um Once you take their all of their income into consideration, let's say they have 2 incomes, they can only afford basically the bare necessities, and, a lot of them can't afford to go to, like, even, high school because high school is supposed to be free in Mexico. However, there's a lot of hidden costs, like books, uniforms. In fact, we had this just to kinda give you an idea in a story, we had this single mom, so single income, so already not doing great, living in the shack. And by shack, I mean you could see the holes on the roof. This is all made by very degraded plywood. So wind gets in, the hot gets in, the cold, the rain. There's dirt floors, and this single mom of 3 daughters, we didn't realize what sort of situation she was living in till one day her daughter comes to our community center. So her daughter had been participating with us for a long time, and she told us she started crying because she got changed to the afternoon, um, schooling, which in Mexico there's morning school and there's afternoon school for high school. And what we found out is why she was so upset about this was the fact that her mom and her were sharing shoes. So her mom would go to work in the morning and take her daughter's shoes that then she would grab to go to school in the afternoon. So if you change her daughter, she got changed to the morning school. Her mom couldn't go to work with shoes. Therefore, her mom could have lost her job. And that is the level of poverty that most of our families are living in.
And it's crazy to think that living in the US, there's so many things that we take for granted. I mean, things that um, we just have on a day-to-day basis, and we like expect these things to be there. Like there's this community that is in literally, you know, 20 minutes away from San Diego that are in such dire situations. And it's just one of those things where instead of deciding to throw away a piece of technology, understanding that, hey, there are people that could actually use it. And I know it's definitely been eye-opening for me, and that's why at least letting people know, letting listeners know, there are ways of taking the things that we would, throw away. Like they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So I don't know if someone can put that to use. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also for people, just to also realize that when and I mean this is a bigger problem that's not sort of not related, but just understanding that most of the time when Americans, when we say recycle, it doesn't usually mean recycle. It just means that it's just going to sit in a landfill somewhere. So even just from an environmental standpoint, just to think that your equipment could have a second life somewhere is, very, very good for sure.
And it's crazy because like things like CRT TVs, right? That so many like people think are obsolete right now. They could absolutely be put to use in other communities and in ways that where it's not just a form of entertainment, but it's ways that students can actually learn and use them as tools to study. Because I remember that was one of those things that you told me is like some of the monitors that we were able to donate to you were actually being put into people's homes, and that's how the kids were getting their schooling because they couldn't physically go to the community center. Is that right?
Yeah, so when we gave them the tablets too, and that this was something that was like really crazy. Even like the lowest piece of technology, it could be just such a major help. There was definitely a lot of kids. So now we have the charity has decided that instead of trying to corral all these kids into a community center, which is not COVID safe, it would be better for us to put them in people's front yards in small cohorts. So we have 27 education pods basically that are out in the community, and those TVs, that's where they live. They live in these education pods.
Mm.
And someone might be like, "Hey, this 35-inch, old LCD screen, like, why would anyone want it?" It's like the reason for it is definitely kids are able to see it, kids are able to participate with it. It's definitely a major help no matter what the technology, because I've seen kids do online school with cracked phones that are 4.5, like the small phones, not even a big phone. No, cracked screen, and just sharing the device with all the different kids just to turn in their homework. So yeah, the pandemic has really shown us a lot of the deficiencies that the education system had, but it really gives us the opportunity. And this again, the government's not, hasn't been helping great, but we really took it as an opportunity to say, how can we do this better? How can we do this cheaper, but in a way that actually benefits someone in the long run? Because you can definitely do it really cheap. We had somebody tell us, "Hey, it's like we have these $100 computers," and I'm like, "Yeah, they look fine. They broke after a little bit," and I was just like, "Well, you spent all that money where you could have spent $500 on one good computer, and we could have probably figured out a way to finesse that computer into helping multiple people." So whatever the resources are, it doesn't matter. It more matters on how our community and our community leaders end up implementing those solutions. So thinking lean, definitely for any organization, charities do it really well.
Dude, that's awesome. And just to hear like the impact that you're having on these families, are there any like favorite stories that you have of, a particular family or particular, member of the family that was able to really just kind of change their life?
So I'm gonna speak on a member of our robotics team. So this was a kid that, seeing him first, because I mean I've seen a lot of these kids grow up. I've been with the charity for all my life, most of my life. So that was definitely one of the most eye-opening things, just kind of seeing him grow. But this kid named Salomon was a child that was super duper shy. Also kind of had a lot of issues with he had a lot of brothers and sisters, and he was the middle child. So when you're the middle child, not the best, because you kind of get ignored. He really took that "I'm getting ignored" in a beautiful direction, because he started participating with the robotics team, and he was telling me, it's like, I really like 3D printing. And at the time, I think he was like 14 or 15. And I remember having this conversation with him of like, hey, you should go to college. You really like engineering. You should go to college for this. And, I didn't finish college, so me telling other kids to go to college sometimes it's really funny, but he really took that, and he was getting really good grades in school. Unfortunately, his dad worked as a construction worker, so he would help him along in the weekends, because he was also kind of getting a little bit older. And then we gave him a full scholarship for high school. And again, like I was explaining before, sometimes the hidden fees of high school can be the barrier for them not to go to high school. So help them through that. But now, he got the top grade, the top entry level score that they've had in 5 years for the engineering program. And he was in our robotics team, and he's the one that won that first prize. But he's a brilliant engineer, and now he's like 2-3 years, and he's missing 1 year, but he has more experience than most of his peers. Plus, he's really smart, so that really helps him along. But Solomon really shows, um that even the quiet kid, the one that gets ignored, is not necessarily the kids that's not smart. It's not necessarily the kid that is not going to make it. And that's why I really love his story, because he really took that to heart, and now he teaches other kids how to do 3D printing, which is how I taught him. I just said, you go, here's the machine, all right, let's learn about the machine. And he really took that and he ran with it. And now when I see kids that know how to 3D print, I'm like, I know who taught them. It was Solomon, you know.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious. You mentioned earlier, I can't remember if that was before or the podcast started or what, but
Yeah.
you said that in Mexico, even listing Excel on your resume can help you stand out. So I'm curious. You teach some pretty high tech classes, right? You teach robotics. You have some game development. How common is it for your students to come into those classes and be like, "Hey, I never realized that I could actually do this. This is something that I want to keep doing." Is that a common occurrence, or can you kind of speak on that a little bit?
So some of our kids haven't even touched, they've seen phones, but they never really touched technology. Um in other terms, we take it for granted, but I mean, you being able to move around your phone and be able to do things and think with your phone is a major advancement and a major leg up that you have. Most of our kids don't have that. So we have to teach them basically from scratch of how do you move around, and how do you do even basic word. A lot of the times they'll just they need to turn in assignments, and those sort of presentations. They just can't even fathom how to turn on the computer. So that's what we've been trying to teach our kids, which is just getting them to understand technology can be useful to you. In fact, at the summer class, I used to teach this 3D printing course, and the 3D printing course, all it insisted on very practical things. So, like, one of my workshops was stop the door, and all the kids had to do was 3D print a door stop for any door that they wanted. So I would, because most of the doors at the community center, basically they open, they have the hinge that lets it, what do you call it? A hinge that lets it kind of swing back and forth.
Hmm.
The kids would have to stop the door at whatever force it was coming by. So some kids would pick really difficult doors, and some kids would pick really easy doors. And what that taught them is it showed them how to be able to uh, grab technology and say, okay, I'm going to use a 3D modeling software. The 3D modeling software is later going to help you to be able to 3D print, and the 3D print needs to be prototyped so that you can use it in the real world. And that jump for kids is really difficult, and it's a thing that we have to teach all of the time, and we have to teach it consciously and consistently. And as soon as you kind of do that a couple times, they learn from that, and they just know I can use and basically human use tools. That's at the end of the day, it's human use tools, and that's what we try to teach our kids. And that's something that has been a major hurdle because they just don't. When adults see kids, they think he's gonna break my washing machine. It's like, yes, he's gonna break your washing machine, but he's gonna learn. And that's some of the stuff that we got able, that I'm sure we were able to do as kids, which was, when we had our own computers, programs crash all the time. That's you breaking it,
Yep.
and that's something that our kids didn't have the ability to do.
That is such an
Dude,
interesting perspective. Wow.
And I'm curious, like, out of all of these different projects that you work on, working with charitable organizations, working with video games, I'm going to get a little deep with this question, Mr. Carlos, and I want to ask, like, why is it that you do what you do? What's your motivating factors?
So I think for me, my keyword is always community. It's funny when I see commercials out and they try to sell me on community, because I'm like, I remember I saw a Levi's commercial a long time ago, and I was so insulted by it, because it was like, oh, together we're one, and it was all these people putting on Levi's, and I'm like, no, dude, just because you put on a pair of Levi shoes, the Levi pants, doesn't mean you have community now. Community is a long road that takes a long time, that builds upon itself, and it creates connections that no one even thinks possible. Like that's the beautiful thing about, like, this is why I'm involved in the, like, for instance, San Diego makers have really forged the way I look at technology. Those are the ones that taught me how to 3D print. And in my community, it's like mostly women run. So they in my community, I've been taught at the charity that women can run very multifaceted operations, and those are some things that sometimes gets like thrown by the wayside, or some people are even put blinders to. They say it's like, oh no, there's no problem here. I'm like, no, there is a problem, And I've also taught by the San Diego Game Developers Association about just being able to make something together, and those are really, really wonderful things. So what's my motivating factor? It's always harpos down to community, and how to create that community, and how to create that sense of camaraderie between each other, and finding those beautiful connections that get created, not from a system, but of people just interacting with each other.
Dude, I absolutely love that. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love having these conversations with you, because for me, that's part of that's the type of person that I want in my community. The people that have a heart of service, people that are that understand the blessings that they have, and understanding that they have the ability to give back to others and make a positive impact on other people's lives. And that's just one of the things that's amazing. That's why we have this EmpowerUp podcast, to help empower others to reach their full potential. And you're absolutely one of those people where, like, we've known each other for years, and the positive energy that you're always bringing, the ways that you are giving back to the community and helping uplift, that's just one of the reasons why, like, I'm honored that you would want to spend time on this podcast, and thank you just so much for blessing me with with your energy, with your time, and with your positivity. So thank you.
Thank you so much too. And yeah, I really appreciate and listening back to some of the episodes too, just thinking about how even with those conversations, I used to listen to a lot of these type of podcasts about games and game developers, and that was one of the things that made me stay into wanting to still continue that game developer career, which was podcasts like this, where people just said, hey, like, I'm passionate about the game industry and I want people to be able to join and make games, because it is such a, like, once you make a game, that's it. You're part of the thing. Like, you did it, Not a lot of people can say they make a game. Even attempting to make a game is such a difficult thing. And I think the people say about not only out of the ordinary, but I think for a lot of people, the difficult thing is that they don't realize how out of the ordinary making a video game is, and how actually incredible it is. That sometimes when they don't reach that goal, they say, "Oh, well, I haven't made a game yet, so I must be bad at it." That's not necessarily the case. It's like, you just, it's just such an incredible thing that you're trying to do, and you should put that into perspective to know what you're trying to achieve is actually much harder, and there's a lot of people that will not be able to do that. And if you are able to, then you've done something amazing, like creating your own app, like Byron, for instance.
Mhm.
Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And something that I love too is that you're offering these classes, I assume for free, or
Mhm.
it's pretty
Yeah.
pretty, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So even in America, right? Most people get access to that level of equipment at the college level, where they spend a lot of money, and it's already prohibitively expensive in America. So the fact that you're doing that in Mexico is awesome. I think that's even giving them a leg up, and the fact that you're trying to teach these values to them so early on, I just think that goes a long way. Like, even if you don't make a game, just having pride in what you're working on as a group, it's very important.
By the way, let me show you. I actually have it in the back, and this, I'm going to explain it in audio format so people understand, because I understand that this is a podcast. I understand. I'll be right back. 1 second.
So I'm just going to take a time to admire Carlos's chair. He's
Oh
got a secret lab chair.
yeah.
It's a beautiful. We got a beautiful big chair. So what I'm holding in my hand currently, it's wood. It's actually a board that was made by one of the kids, and he gave it to me as a gift. I used to teach a board game class, where I told kids, and you can't, if you can see it in the video version. By the way, you should watch the video version. I look really good. But I have a bunch of board games. I basically would take my board games and I would tell kids, you're going to modify a board game that already exists. And they would learn mechanics. They would learn how to, basically, the low modding. Instead of modding video games, they were modding board games, which is a much easier barrier of entry. So one of the kids, by hand, did this for me, which was it's Sorry. It's just Sorry.
Mm.
The board game Sorry. And it it was just incredible when he handed it to me, because this was maybe 4 or 5 years after I had taught the board game class. He sells these now.
That's
He
awesome.
sells these out of it, like, in a, and he sells other games as well. And so I was looking up with him, and he speaks a language called Yucateco, which is a indigenous language. And so it really got me interested into thinking, what are some of the ancient board games the Aztecs would play. And there's this game from elote, which is corn, that they used to play. And what it taught kids, it taught them not only about crop rotation, but it taught them about how constellations moved year round. So it's this really ancient board game that not many people play, but some very adult people, like indigenous people that are in central Mexico, they do still play this game. But what was so beautiful about it is that when he handed me this, and I said to him, like, this is a beautiful game, and I told him, you should research for me about elote and what that is and how it's played. And he was able to look into it, and he's going to very soon be producing the first batch of his board game for elote, which I think we would have definitely lost that game at some point. And we just need to, like, there. And in fact, so then it got me into this horrible rabbit hole where I was looking into Mesoamerican board games, and now I've been like, this has been my latest obsession. And through his help too, because he called a couple cousins and say, hey, do you guys play this? And they're like, yeah, we play it. We don't play it often, but we play it. So I've been finding a lot of ancient board games that are really interesting because they're all math based.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme levels of math went into these games just to teach kids very advanced concepts.
I love it. Gamification at its finest.
Yeah.
Oh man,
dude, that is cool. And to see something like that, and like one of your students being able to modify a board game and then use it in a way where it can be it can help preserve history, right? That's an amazing ability to teach and gamify and have fun and then learn about somebody's culture. And like, I'm thinking, like, how could you turn that into a video game and make that accessible to people around the world? Because I think learning something like that would be so much better than just reading in a textbook,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So, dude, that's cool. I would love to be able to like hear more about that in future as this project is being developed.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the game industry, it's like we focus a lot on Japan and America. As it's funny because we focus America as a market, not necessarily as a, like, yes, they are a producer of video games, but usually you first think Japan and then you think like America. But there's a lot of places where I think, because board games have been going on for for as long as we've been playing games. I mean, I saw some of the original bone dice from goats that people used to use, and I think if we incentivize people to say, hey, like, look, this is another good way to share culture, because a lot of times culture gets shared through food, but I think we can also share that through board games, and we can find older board games. And just like chess too, because I mean, chess went through a lot of iterations before it became chess. I think for a lot of these ancient board games, they still have a long way to go till they meet their modern counterparts, and now, especially knowing so many modern mechanics that work, that's definitely one of the things that I do try to encourage people to explore.
And speaking of games and like cultural impacts, I'm curious, on a personal level, how have video games positively impacted your life?
Video games, everything. That I don't think. Not only do I not think I would be sitting here without video games, but video games, I think, was one of the first ways that I learned English. So I'm actually not a native English speaker, believe it or not. Thank you to The Simpsons and video games. And especially the video game part was definitely a thing that got me to learn English at an accelerated level and very quickly. And because everyone spoke English, and I actually was taught by a bunch of people from Dublin in World of Warcraft how to speak English. So my accent is not the same as my brother's accent or my dad's accent when they speak English. So just goes to show you that I was just a creation of that environment. So for me, video games have taught me and have been taught me, have shown me, have um, really created who I am as a person, and they still do. And that's also one of the really beautiful things about it, which is uh now my view on video games is definitely very different. But like, especially when I see game jam games, I love how a game jam game can make, even though I have such a high level of video game literacy, game jam games can still make me see it in such a, like, I'm like, I don't even understand that language of what you're trying to do, which is really wonderful and really great. And I think that's what has been even a more of an impactful thing, which is since video games just changed so drastically, it's helped me along in that sense.
Cool. Oh man. Wow.
But yeah,
Alrighty, Mr. Carlos. So, what's next in the journey of Carlos? I mean, like,
What's
I've
that?
known you for years, and what are the things that you're looking to do from this moment on?
Okay, so some of the main things is that I'm definitely getting more involved in the charity aspect. It's been kind of one of those things that I've been moving back and forth. Um, for the longest time, I was definitely trying to get into the AAA space of video games, but more and more I'm starting to realize that that's maybe not a good spot for me. So now I'm really trying to figure out ways just to share in my love of video games and my love of video game creation with other people in the fastest way possible. And it's not necessarily making games, but it's encouraging other people to make games or to interact in that way. So working with the charity is number one, and then number two, just making ends meet, which I currently work at a company that lets me do that. I work from home, so now I'm able to kind of set my time much better. But I will be doing more streaming because I think I just need to continue to have these sort of conversations to move forward, not only myself but like the people around me.
That is awesome.
Awesome.
I love the fact that you realize that maybe the AAA space isn't for you, but you've taken the more positive approach of let me encourage others, and you're getting them started earlier. You've started all of these initiatives. You're at the forefront of all these initiatives, and I just think that's awesome. I love. It's like Steve said, your energy. It's so positive.
Thank you.
And regarding these upcoming streams that you have,
Mhm.
where can people find you?
So you can find me at Can Workshop. Basically, anything that says CAN Workshop is me. I currently have regular streams where I play Age of Empires using a flight stick, which is that's not how you're supposed to play a real time strategy game, or so I've been told. So that's definitely a good place to find me. I'm also on Dirty Robots, which is we'll call it the 18 plus sort of afternoon show. So that's more of a comedy podcast. The comedy podcast. It's a comedy YouTube channel. So we do let's plays. And other than that, yeah, that's those are the two projects that I'm currently really focused on, and that's where people can find me. And I will be doing more 3D printing as well, because I'm going to be 3D printing a couple of board game pieces as well for a couple of my friends' board games. So if you are interested, and I'm also very approachable. I'm currently also talking to a couple people that want to get into the game industry, even though I've never been in it. But I definitely will give them the same resources I've been giving throughout the years. So if you want to get me on Discord, that's also really easy to find. I hang out in a bunch of different Discords, and you can always just book me for an afternoon, and we can have a little chat about what you're up to.
That's awesome. And as we're wrapping up the podcast, let's what are some parting words you could give to someone who maybe is new to the whole um basically a whole space of like giving back to the community? What are some resources that they can access? I know you have an organization you work with. Can you tell everyone what that is one more time and how best to reach them? Because I know you said that you already have some avenues in place for donations, whether it be physical, monetary, and etc.
Yeah, so even time based, for sure, if you want to give us your time, you can let me know, and I can let you know where you can donate there. But buildamiracle.net is our website. And in buildamiracle.net, you will find our donate button. If you want to write a little note of, where you want your donation to go, that basically would get earmarked towards different programs. If you have equipment that you want to send down to San Diego, we do have as well a way for you to contact us on the website, or you can find me anywhere. Can Workshop. All my DMs are open on Twitter, on Instagram, on Twitch, on YouTube, and yeah, like my parting words for anyone trying to, I don't want to call it make a difference. I think, I've gotten as much back from me giving as giving has given me. So I would say always just have an open heart, have an open mind, and give to whatever. It could be your neighbor that needs help with their gutters. It could be, some kid across the world that just needs someone to talk to. So it doesn't matter where you give, as long as you give. And if more of us just do that and, say, I'm going to spend this amount of time just giving, it will be all better.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carlos. Really appreciate having you on the podcast. I'd love to have you back on for another future episode. See what you're up to. As your organization gets more, you know, gets more developed and everything. I'd love to hear more about what's going on there. And congratulations again on the robotics thing. That story was awesome. I loved hearing about the challenges that your students overcame, especially with the with the limited budget that they had to build it too.
Yep. Thank you so much for inviting me as well.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.